Canada continues to wrestle with the ethics of making assisted suicide available to minors and those with mental illness. Today's guest joins us from Delta, BC to discuss this further. Angelina Ireland is the president of the Delta Hospice Society in Delta. Welcome to Bridge City News, Angelina.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Okay, now before we begin speaking about assisted suicide, otherwise known as medical assistance in dying, or M.A.I.D for short, can you explain what the Delta Hospice Society is all about? What is your mission and your goals?
Yeah, the Delta Hospice Society is a 30-year organization, and we are committed to palliative care. And palliative care is end-of-life care. It is a very noble 50-year medical discipline that basically helps people in their last days to live well until their natural end. And palliative care does not include M.A.I.D, assisted suicide, euthanasia, or whatever they're calling it these days.
Okay, now can you share some of your backstory? Because you ran into some opposition on your pro-life stance. And how and why did the government decide to push you out and take over the palliative care operations of the Delta Hospice Society?
Right. So, as a private organization, we fundraised about $9 million to open a hospice, a palliative care facility back in 2010. As a palliative care organization, we are committed to the authentic, medical discipline. When M.A.I.D legislation came through, the province of British Columbia then told us that we would have to provide that kind of service. Now, our organization, we leased land from the Fraser Health Authority. We had a 30-year lease. And then we got a contract to provide 10 palliative care beds. So when we refused to participate in M.A.I.D, because it's against our mission and our reason for being, the government canceled our contract.
Wow.
Which, for us, that was fine. It was $1.5 million a year. We were very happy to privately fundraise that amount. But what they also did was they took a step forward and they canceled our lease. With 20 years left on that lease, the Fraser Health Authority told us that we were going to have to get off that land. Now, our hospice and supportive care center that we privately built on that land then became fixtures to the land. So essentially, they evicted us from our hospice, from our own building, told us to get out because we refused to kill our patients. So basically, we were evicted in March of 2021, and the Fraser Health Authority then took over our hospice 2 weeks later, reopened it, and then now offers M.A.I.D in that facility.
Wow, that's shocking. Now, I understand that there's ongoing debate whether the Delta Hospice Society is a public institution owned by the government or if it is actually privately owned, which would seem to make the government actions illegal.
No, the Delta Hospice Society is a private organization under the BC Societies Act. So no, the government does not own anything that we have to do because we're private. The only thing the government had to do with us was, first of all, providing that contract with a private provider, canceling that contract, and then canceling the lease that we had on the land on which we built that hospice facility.
Now, moving forward, what are the options for the Delta Hospice Society? Like, are there any possibilities of being allowed back in your building to run a euthanasia-free palliative care center where the patients will feel safe?
No, I don't think so. Certainly not with the current government that we now have provincially and even federally, quite honestly. The only thing that we ever wanted to do in our 30-year existence was to provide authentic palliative care. But what's happening in this country is like I will call it a coercive makeover of what palliative care is. That makeover is something that we never had any interest in participating in. We want it to be authentic, traditional in our delivery of palliative care because, we have a very large constituency who wants our services. We're not speaking to the people who want M.A.I.D. We're speaking to the people, we're representing the people who don't, who want that authentic and traditional end of life experience. Those are our supporters, and that's our constituency. But apparently, that's not welcome in the current regime. So we're here. We continue to want to provide those kind of services. So we'll see what happens in the future.
Now, I understand that you're getting a lot of requests for the do not euthanize advanced directives. Can you explain how this works?
Yeah, so this is a legal document that has been vetted and produced by a lawyer. And we have produced one for every province in Canada, which basically is the mirror of the DNR, which is a do not resuscitate advanced directive. So our people want to make it very clear that, yes, in fact, we want to have everything that doctors can do to preserve life as opposed to take our lives.
And now you have something called the Guardian Angel program. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so what we find here in British Columbia is that the public healthcare system basically now has a monopoly on every patient, on every service, and every private organization like we were that used to partner with the government has been pushed out. And so what we're saying is that, okay, if the government wants to provide everything, then we want to ensure that, in fact, they're doing it right, that they are providing all the services that they claim to be providing. So a Guardian Angels is like a health advocacy program, which will match volunteers with people inside of the healthcare system to advocate on their behalf. Because, sometimes when people are very ill, they don't have the energy to speak for themselves, and they need people who are well to help to communicate that, in fact, they want palliative care, that they want the services that they have a right to access, and they don't want M.A.I.D. And so that's where, we fit in now in terms of being able to help people access palliative care and that authentic, traditional type of care.
Now, do you have any stats on whether or not patients are being pressured by medical staff or by family members to sign papers to request assisted suicide?
Well, we have, I'll call it anecdotal evidence. We have people calling us all the time, saying that they are being pressured. It is truly just a standard form of everyday activity now to suggest to people that they have M.A.I.D. Look, you know what? That's not even legal, but that's what's happening. People are supposed to bring it up themselves. They're supposed to suggest it themselves, not doctors, nurses, people with a tremendous amount of power in that relationship to suggest it to them. So yes, in fact, we have people calling us all the time saying that they feel like that's being their suggested course of care. That's not right. That's not what anybody signed up for.
Where is Canada at now with possibly allowing for assisted suicide for those with sole underlying conditions such as like mental illness and depression? Is this really going to happen?
Well, of course, because Bill C-7 was passed last year, or is it now 2 years ago? Everything's like a blur to me. Everything's going so quickly. So they have truly committed to. This allowing of people with mental illness was only a sunset clause in that legislation, and basically it was to allow probably doctors and everyone to get ready. So of course it's going to happen. There's been a bit of a pause. The federal government has put a bit of a pause in terms of not forcing that to happen March 17th when it was supposed to. But I don't think for a moment that it will not happen because this government is committed to allowing anybody with an intolerable situation which could mean a whole number of different things, to access M.A.I.D. So I believe it's just a matter of time.
What would you like to see the government put in place to provide proper palliative care for those nearing end of life?
A number of years ago, the government was committed to, promoting palliative care unanimously in the House and the Senate to providing palliative care to Canadians. What we've seen is really that promise has sort of gone by the wayside. We would like to see, and I can't be political, right? Because we're a not-for-profit organization. We're not supposed to be political, but what we can say is that we are advocating for palliative care. That we want to see it as a right to every Canadian to be able to access it, just as there's now apparently a right for every Canadian to be able to access death. So we think that it should be equal. That's all we're asking for. We're asking for access. We're asking for commitment by the government to allow people to access palliative care. We see now that maybe only 30% of Canadians can access true, authentic palliative care. We truly deserve more than that, as a nation. And that's all we're asking for is equal access under the law to allow people authentic palliative care to die in a manner which is, dignified and respectful to their natural end.
It almost seems that palliative care and M.A.I.D, they're paradoxical to each other. And so this is quite perplexing news to hear that you're providing palliative care but yet you're not offering M.A.I.D, and then you get kicked out of your own building.
Oh yes, indeed. I mean, that's why our story became international news. Because in fact, these are two separate streams of healthcare. Palliative care and M.A.I.D, never the two should meet, in a medical discipline sense. But however, they've now been pushed together. And we have stood to say that in fact they're not to be together. We are not going to say anything to people who want to access M.A.I.D. What we are going to say is that those people who have no interest should be given the same rights, the same dollars in our public healthcare system to access a palliative care model.
And I'm sure the viewers that are hearing this for the first time are just shocked at this news. So what can they, our viewers, do to help the Delta Hospice Society in their fight for life?
Well, we ask you to become a member. We're a member-driven organization. Become a member at deltahospicesociety.org. Stand with us. It has been a tremendous battle just to survive in the last 3 years. We've been not only attacked by the government, we've been attacked by private lobbyists, private activist groups. Dying with Dignity Canada came after us personally to try to shut us down, to silence our voices. Look, there's room for all of us. There must be room for all of us in this country. We don't ask for anything that is outrageous. We ask for a place for our people who want to access our services. And anything less would be a disservice to this country. And so that's why we continue to stand and continue to fight just for a place.
Now, Angelina, you're one of the speakers at the Canadian Religious Freedom Summit taking place in Ottawa on February 4th. Can you tell us a bit about this event?
I think that ultimately, we gather to ensure that we do have access to freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the freedoms that are guaranteed to us by our charter, by our Constitution. And apparently, we're not going to be able to just have those guaranteed freedoms unless we continue to fight for them. And in a pluralist society, it should be a given that we're allowed to have that voice. But apparently in this country right now, it is not. And so, we gather to speak about the things that are important to us and to just make people aware that what's important to you, you must stand to defend it. Because if you do not, it will disappear.
Well, thanks so much for being with us today, Angelina. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today.
Thank you.